You're live now, thanks, Chair.
Welcome everyone. I'm Councillor Janet Thompson, Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Board. I would like to welcome you to this virtual meeting. Can I remind all participants that normal rules of procedure apply? For example, comments and questions need to be directed through the Chair. Whilst members of the public can view this meeting via YouTube Live, they will not be able to actively participate or comment on proceedings. As this meeting is being live streamed, can I remind all participants that their conduct should reflect this? I'll go to the agenda. Have you got any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair. Apologies have been received from Councillors Morstan, McIntyre and Storey, and Councillor Rooney is in attendance as substitute for Councillor Storey, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Have you got any declarations of interest? Take that as a no. The Executive Forward Work Programme. 2 members have read that. Is there any comments or questions on the Executive Work Programme? Well, can we just note these? Right, I know we've got quite a few officers here today. So when I get to you on your agenda item, I'll introduce you then. So we've got the Executive Member of Communities and Education, which is Councillor Mika Smars. I'd like to welcome you. And we've also got Sue Butcher, Executive Director of Children's Services, Richard Horniman, Director of Regeneration and Culture, Marion Walker, Head of Stronger Communities. I don't know whether I've missed anyone else out on this agenda item. I think I've done that wrong, haven't I? I've done it the wrong way. I've got to 5 instead of 4. So we'll take 5 and then I'll take 4 if that's all right with Tony. Is that all right, Tony? Right, so I'll hand over to you, Mika. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us about your work programme and portfolio?
Well, I'm going first. Cheers, Shannon. Thank you. Okay, so hello everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. So I'm obviously Executive Member for Communities and Education. I think scrutiny plays a really important role, and it certainly today, you know, having to go over things, it's made me question where I currently am and where I want to be as well. As you all know, it's a really vast portfolio, so I won't be able to cover every single thing today, but I'm going to try and do my best to pick out what I think the most important points are. And although there's overlap between the different elements, I think what I'm going to do is break it up into communities, culture and education. And what I've been asked to do is sort of set out what my aims and aspirations are, progress that's been made to date, and any sort of emerging issues as well. So if there's any questions at the end of it all, I'm happy to take them. I've also got some of the fantastic directors that I work with and operational leads, and they can help too with any questions you might have. So I'll take a big breath and I'll get started. So in terms of communities, I'll go through what my aims and aspirations were and are. I think overall, and it's probably something that a lot of people want, and that's a safer Middlesbrough. And that's because it impacts on people's well-being, it impacts on businesses, perceptions of our town. I also wanted to see a really good joint working approach to avoid duplication and spread our resources further. And also something really important to me was and is supporting communities to help themselves. So all of that fantastic grassroots stuff that goes on in our wards. So 2 years ago now, I can't believe it's 2 years ago, it's gone fast. I was asked it was actually by Barry Coppinger. He was chair of the Community Safety Partnership at the time. And he suggested, because of my portfolio, that I became chair. So that's something that I've been working on. And over the last year or so, we've produced a community safety strategy, and that's currently being signed off by all of the partners that are around that table. And it's taken a lot of work to pull together. And we had away days. I thought that actually meant going away, but it doesn't, unfortunately. But we had sort of group gets together to decide for people to tell us what everyone's priorities were across organisations and to pull all of that into one document. So I'm hoping to be able to share that soon. But I think, as you all know, we revamped our neighbourhood safety department. There's a new departmental structure. We've now got approximately 60 wardens, and that pulled in environment staff, car parking staff, and something that sort of dated back to when Adam Allen was director of this was getting new powers for the street wardens, and that was something that I was a really big advocate for. Marion, who's here today, worked really hard on that. And it just simply means that wardens can, before they receive these powers, they couldn't enforce people. They couldn't, if people were asked their names, they didn't have to give them. And now we've got powers to make sure that people have to give names and addresses. And that's actually... Adam John?
I'm writing something down, sorry. Yes, I'm writing something down, sorry.
Can we mute, please? Can we mute, please, and then let Maker finish, please? So all of those that are not on mute, can you ensure you're muted, please? Carry on, Maker.
And we've also got a new operational manager called Dale Metcalf, and I'm sure a few of you will have been in contact with him. He's absolutely superb and comes with a wealth of experience. And the other big thing to mention is something called AIM. It stands for Active Intelligence Mapping. And basically, we've employed a data analyst who pulls together all of the sort of crime and antisocial behaviour issues that are going on. And we have a fortnightly meeting to decide what the major issues are and how we're going to sort of deploy resources, and it's going really well. A chief inspector for Middlesbrough neighbourhoods, Daryl, thinks it's fantastic and it's really working for them. Locality Working, that's something else to mention. It's kind of delayed a little bit because we've not been able to get people physically together because of COVID, but we've been doing a lot of virtual work on that. So the discussions have been going ahead, and there's been a lot of collaborative working. Something that I'm really passionate about is the community grants scheme. So this has changed slightly. We've got £160,000, and it's any grassroots community organisation can apply for these grants of up to £1,500. And I know many of you as ward councillors have helped residents or community groups apply for them. And I'm actually on the grants panel that's given out hundreds of awards of these grants, and it's just so important, and there's so much good work going on. We get a lot of bang for our buck actually with that money. There's a community strategy and development, and in terms of emerging issues, I would say a big one on the horizon is the reopening of things, so the hubs and the libraries. That's going to be happening from April the 12th. And as well, I sort of touched on the community organisations and charities and the good work that's going on. I think we're going to have to really keep a close eye on how those different organisations are doing in light of COVID. So I hope I've given you a bit of a whistle-stop tour there of communities, and I'm now going to go on to culture. So in terms of aims and aspirations for culture, when we came in, when I was given the role, it was just on the back of the big weekend, which was just superb for Middlesbrough, absolutely put us on the map. And we wanted to really build on that and bring more events, really high profile events like that to the town. So we were looking at an enhanced events calendar. Obviously, COVID's got a bit hugely got in the way of that. But we are working on what happens next in terms of events. I also wanted a more commercial outlook. So things like the town hall, was kind of losing money year on year, and I wanted to make sure that that was turned around, and as well as kind of washing its own face, could bring in some money for the council, and we could actually reinvest that into culture. And then improving key assets such as Newham Grange Farm, Thesaurus Park, and something that's really important to me is safeguarding our heritage. So Old Town Hall, Captain Cook Pub and the Transporter Bridge. Another thing, probably something that should have come higher up, is supporting our culture organisations in Middlesbrough. So progress made to date. We've got something called a Middlesbrough Cultural Partnership, and it's gone from strength to strength. So this is basically a collective that's chaired by Charlotte Nichol, who was our head of culture, of all of the brilliant artistic organisations in Middlesbrough. And over the past year, all of the organisations have collectively been awarded £1 million, which is just superb. So it shows it's working. We've got a new website and even a dedicated press officer for that, so that's great. Newham Grange Farm, there's been loads of success with Newham Grange Farm over the past year, despite COVID. It was sold out over Christmas. Loads of fantastic work going on there. We've got a new refurbed linear building, which is going to host all kinds of educational stuff. The Christmas lights, that was a big success. Again, we couldn't sort of invite people into the town, but lots and lots of people commented on how lovely they were, and we're going to look to build on that this year. And something that I've been really involved in is the Towns Fund and Future High Streets Fund bids. So I was on the Town Deal board, and for both of those, we managed to pull in £36 million, which is just absolutely superb. I was an advocate of using some of that money for the Old Town Hall, the Captain Cook Pub, some towards an events budget, and all of that, as far as I'm aware, is going to be going ahead, which is great news. And we've also, over the last year, Charlotte's worked really hard to any opportunities for funding for recovery from the Arts Council, to sort of make those applications, and we've received as a council around £500,000 as a result of that for culture, which is again brilliant. In terms of the emerging issues, again, it's probably reopening and starting to look at those events, the events calendar. The events team have got a really difficult task on their hands, because we want to be able to promote exciting events, but equally it's difficult to know whether we're going to want big gatherings. So it's just looking at how we do things, probably in a slow and steady way, to be honest, to make sure that it's done safely. And we've got the museums opening back up, I think it's mid-July. So the last bit then is education. I was given this remit, I think it was in summer last year, and to be quite honest with you, I was quite nervous about it, and I know that there was concern that my portfolio is really vast. I'm not a teacher, I don't come from an educational background, but I'm a mother of 2 children in education, and I've obviously gone through it myself, and I just wanted to, I suppose, come at it from a point of view of a resident and as a mother of children in education. I feel that I've got a good understanding of it now. Some of my aims were, initially, I kind of found out what the landscape in Middlesbrough was, and that is that as a local authority, we don't have direct control over all of our schools. The majority of them are academies, and we've got 7 maintained primary schools, but I just wanted to make sure that the head teachers and the staff feel that we're supporting them as a local authority. And that started by me getting out there, visiting the schools and talking to the head teachers. We've got certain statutory roles in terms of education. We need to make sure that we've got enough school places for children. and then we've got to make sure that our children are retaining as well. Other aims included, I wanted to expand Tony's 50 Futures venture. I'm sure a lot of you know what that is, but I'll go into it in a bit more detail later on. And also, we all know about children's services and the challenges we've had there. And I wanted to be, well, I am integral to the improvement plan. And also be willing to try, suggest new ideas and try new things in terms of making sure that Middlesbrough children have got the best chances. So in terms of progress to date, we have got that constant dialogue going on with head teachers and school staff. I think it's actually, in a weird way, COVID has helped that, because we've needed to make sure that they've felt supported throughout all of that, have risk assessments in place. I suppose one small example of being in discussion with the head teachers, they were saying that they were needing to spend the budget on hand sanitizer. I didn't think that was right, and we did our best to address that by launching a special fund for them to apply for just something simple like that. It made them feel supported, I think. Another huge achievement is the digital inclusion, and I know that many of you supported us doing this. We invested £350,000 in extra laptops for children across Middlesbrough. We're working on a wider strategy for digital inclusion. In terms of 50 Futures, I got an approach from Jane Turner from Teesside Uni, who wanted to see something similar to 50 Futures, but working across the town. So I thought it was a great idea, and we're actually currently working on something where it's not just work experience within the council, but hopefully we can get partners on board. And I want a bit of a one-stop shop for anyone in Middlesbrough that's looking for work opportunities or to develop their careers. What else can I say? Care leavers. So I'm also, along with Alma, we are both governors on the virtual school. So we need to make sure that our children in care, that their education is absolutely prioritised. Something that's come out of that is that we are constantly looking for opportunities within the council for care leavers, and I know that a couple of them have actually got placements, so that's great news. And then I think it's about suggesting new ideas. So there's a couple of things I'm working on at the moment, something called School Streets. So I've got out to head teachers asking them if they'd be interested in this project, basically, which is limiting traffic outside schools between certain hours, and it means that children will be more likely to actively travel to school, which can help in all different kinds of ways. So the emerging issues from this are probably the biggest and most challenging. The biggest being the catch-up. So obviously the government's going to be investing heavily in this, and we're not quite sure how that's going to look. I don't think the money's going to come through the local authority. I think it's going to go directly to schools. But obviously, as a local authority, we're going to want to be supporting that in every which way we can. The Holiday Activity Fund, actually, we were awarded £1 million for that, and I think that can help, because it's not just about reading, writing and maths. It's making sure that children can socialise, you know, have good language skills, and I think that's going to add toward that. Mental health in children, that's obviously a big one. You know, having children myself, I know how difficult this past year's been, and we're going to have to keep a really close eye on children as they're sort of rejoining the school community. And school attendance as well, particularly for vulnerable learners. I've asked for a bit of an update today, and we're only, I think it's 93% attendance at the moment, and nationally that's 94.5%, so we're doing pretty well. So I think that's it. I hope I haven't rambled on too much, but if anybody has any questions, I'll certainly do my best to answer them. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you, Mika. That was very comprehensive. I'll take questions now. Councillor McTighe, and then...
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. it's a sort of question stroke comment, if you sort of indulge me. It's with regard to AIM, active intelligence mapping. Those of us who've been here a while know that that's nothing new in Middlesbrough. It was working very well. And I'd like to know personally why it was stopped, because we often get residents, well, or most residents say, I'm not going to report anything, it's a waste of time, nothing happens. And that was a very good answer we have to say, well, actually, it does. And I would explain to them what happened. They met once a week. I think it was set up by Ray Mallon and somebody he worked with in CID, Ian, can't remember his name, John McPherson. And every week they met and looked at this map, and it would tell the council where the hotspots were. And I would say to residents, if you don't put a complaint in, it won't be registered. And obviously those, you know, the areas that have the most rig spots on or light, whatever was up on the map, obviously they will get priority. So why was it stopped? Does anybody know why it was stopped? Because it was very good.
Councillor Smiles.
Yeah, do you know what, Joan? You're absolutely right. I know that this is something that went on prior to this administration.
I wasn't interrupting you, by the way. I was making notes, but I was talking out loud. I didn't realise on.
No, that's fine. And I know that it hadn't gone on for some time when we came in, but it was something that Jeff Field in particular wanted to reintroduce. And it's taken a while to get the meetings to how those involved wanted them to be. But we're on the path now, and it's really working. You know, we're having a bit of an issue at the moment in Nunthorpe with antisocial behaviour. So it's really important as ward councillors, we let our residents know there's no good coming to us. They have to report it either to the street wardens or to the police, because that's how we're going to get action, and that's how we're going to direct the resource.
Right, I'll bring in Councillor Cope. Councillor Cope.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, just a first comment on the last thing. I do agree with that, and we have antisocial behaviour, as every ward does. And I've been working with the street wardens to try and sort that out. So it's a good thing, but we also need some feedback as well. If you report something, I would like to see some feedback back to the councillors and things saying, this was reported, that's reported, these are the actions. And it's not something that you can do instantly, but it's something that would be useful, because then you're aware of it and we're aware of it. Just going back onto the town hall, obviously I've been pushing for the town hall, as you well know, for quite some time, and the rest of St Hilda's. I'm delighted to see that's got the money for the town's fund. That's well done. Congratulations with that. What I'd like to see is a plan for what we're going to do with the town hall. Obviously you can't do it instantly, but certainly for the future, that either community hub or something like that, to bring it back, because something that really upset me over the years was to see St Hilda's destroyed. Having been based over there for many years, all I saw was promises from previous administration, not blaming anybody, but previous administration, and it just pulled the lot down, and Dacre Street and all the areas around there were destroyed. So great, we're going to do something now, and let us get everything back to normal. Thank you.
Councillor Smiles, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I know how passionate David is about the old town hall. It's great that we've secured the funds, because it needs to be put safe. I actually went inside it. It was probably about a year ago, and it was in a shocking state, like really unsafe. And I think although there's been commercial interest in the past, as soon as they understand how much it's going to cost to put it right, it puts them off. So we need to get it safe, and then we can start looking at, you know, those fabulous ideas.
I've got Councillor Cook, and then I've got Councillor Hubbard and Councillor O'Dyn, and then I'll bring Councillor McTighe and Councillor Roney. So Councillor Cook.
It's just in regarding to some of the funding that's being bandied about. I'm absolutely all for protecting heritage, but one of my big concerns is the state of Albert Park. I've spent quite a lot of time there over Easter weekend, and there's a clipboard in one of the offices, and it's about the fountain. And every day a member of staff has to write on that clipboard that the fountain doesn't work. And I'm just wondering how demoralising that must be for them to just have to do that every day. Look around the offices and look around the building and see all the paint peeling, all the walls cracking. So it's great that we're going to invest loads of money in the town hall that's really far away, that not many people access, but Albert Park, right in the centre of our town, I think should get some investment, and we should really look to secure that and protect that.
Councillor Smiles, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I think that is a really good point, Chris. I think, you know, I've noticed that the fountain doesn't work. We need that to be working. It's, you know, it's a lovely park, Albert Park, and it's a shame that there's bits that need improvement. So I'll absolutely pass that on and see what can be done in terms of getting funding.
Councillor Hubbard, did you want to come in? Sorry,
No.
Sir Councillor Saunders.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I noticed Councillor Smiles, I'm bringing the Southland Centre up. Can I just express my disappointment in the lack of communication and information that ward councillors have over the Southland Centre over the previous months. With all due respect with yourself and the officers, we haven't been engaged at all. I'd just like to put you in the picture. Seems we've only been a councillor for 2 years. Myself and Councillor Hubbard, along with the late Councillor Peter Cox, fought over years to keep the former Southland Centre open. Unfortunately, we lost that vote. We are pleased that we are getting some sort of build for it, but we are very disappointed in the lack of communication that we've been having. You know, and no disrespect to the chair and the secretary of the Park and Community Council. Residents don't go to them; they come to the councillors and ask for information, and we are not getting it. Can I ask you to improve the communication we're getting from yourself and the officers?
Councillor Smiles, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I can respond to that, and all I can do is apologise. You know, there was the meeting yesterday, and I'm so sorry that you know that you weren't invited to that. But I totally take on board what you're saying, and I'll make sure Richard and I vow to make sure that any future meetings that you're involved in.
Thanks, Councillor. Thanks,
Right.
Chair.
Thank you. I'll bring Councillor Din. Councillor Din, do you want to
Yeah,
ask a
thanks.
question?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Smiles, I think your presentation was absolutely brilliant. As Chair mentioned, I think very good. You know, initially you said obviously you weren't sure where you are with this, but I think you did a really thorough job, nice job. Can I just ask, in terms of the community grants, I just wondered, you know, whether some of the back alley gates we have problem with, some of them obviously council say they haven't got enough funding, they can't do it. So could the residents apply for this grant to put the back alley gates on, do you think?
Councillor Smiles, do you want to respond to that?
Thank you for that comment, Councillor. That's really lovely. In terms of the alleys, yes, they absolutely can. We've got Adam Parkinson, who's leading a group on the alleys, and part of his remit is to help residents and community groups apply for those grants specifically. So please either drop me a line or drop Adam Parkinson a line, and we can definitely help you apply for those grants.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I've got Councillor McTighe, then Councillor Rooney, and then Councillor Cook. So I'll say Councillor McTighe and then Councillor Garvey. Councillor McTighe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Through you. Can I ask you, Councillor Smiles, a question about the wardens, please? It's something I get from residents quite a lot. It's also coming from myself. I'm out on the ward every day at some point because it's a big ward and it's spread out. And I can honestly say I never, ever see a warden. So would it be possible for us to know where they're operating at any one point in time? I know, obviously, they've got to be, sometimes they're called away, but I don't know what the system is at the moment. Are they based in one ward, then they move to another, then they move to another? Or is it just, you know, what system is there? So that if we need them desperately, you know, we can ring them and say, this is happening. I know we have a telephone number, but it's also to assure residents when they say, you know, we never see them. And I can say, well, actually, today they're operating so-and-so ward. Can we have a system like that, please?
Councillor Smiles, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I can respond to that. I mean, in my personal experience as street wardens just in Nunthorpe is you get on the phone to them and they're here, you know, they come, which is great because the police sometimes don't. But perhaps, Marion, we could have a bit of a monthly roundup for ward members so that they know what the main sort of work's been over the past month, so they can feed that back to residents. Would that be helpful?
That's fine, that's fine. Can I also ask you about the AIM meetings? Did you say that they're once a month?
Once a fortnight.
Once a fortnight. Who's allowed to sit in on them, please? Because I know when we had them before, councillors weren't allowed to sit in on them because they were, but one particular councillor was no longer with us. She made us have such a nuisance that they said, that's it, no more councillors can attend.
Yeah, so I mean, I've only been to one of the meetings because it's not for really politicians to be involved in. It's a very operational. It's a very operational thing. But I mean, I can, if you drop me an email, I can gladly sort of update you on AIM and how it's going. But it's not one of those meetings that councillors are sitting in on.
Councillor Rooney, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. First, I've got a question, but first of all, in terms of the digital exclusion and the equipment that was given to schools, it was extremely welcome. And I'm a governor on one of the primary schools in Middlesbrough, and they found it so helpful given that the central government had promised one number and then changed their mind. So it was a great effort, I think, from the council. So just to feed that back, I know they were really grateful. My question's around the warden services, and it's actually a group of questions, but they are all linked, so I hope that's okay. Looking at the budgets regarding the staffing and the vehicles and equipment, do you have a breakdown of what we're paying on that service area? And there's a concern that the TVCA are currently funding the majority of that. So what's going to happen when that ceases? And I know that there has been a lot of press information about the number of fines that were being issued in terms of the warden services. So are they FPNs, are the actual fines, or is it court action? And you know, what's the breakdown within that about how many have been paid, how many are still to be paid? You know, we're still chasing. But a summary, I think, of that work would be really helpful. Thank you.
Councillor Smiles, want to respond?
I can repeat any of that if you want.
Yeah,
Councillor Smiles. And we're bringing Councillor Smiles to respond to that. Councillor Smiles.
Yeah, I'll partially respond to that, Councillor Rooney. So in terms of the laptops, thank you for that feedback. The DFE did deliver 10,000 in Middlesbrough, and I think our sort of remit was to help those children that might have slipped through the cracks. So those that aren't classified as disadvantaged, but you know, even as a parent myself, affording 2 laptops for a couple of children is very expensive, and I can't even imagine what that would be like for parents with several children. So yeah, thanks for the comments on that. In terms of the other stuff you've asked, I was wondering if I could bring Marion in, because I think she'd be best placed to answer the operational questions. I think the first one was on, you were after a budget breakdown for staffing and equipment. Is that right?
Right, I'll bring Marion in. Marion, do you want to answer them questions?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't have the information to hand at the moment, but I can certainly provide you with a breakdown of that information if you want it. I've got that easily accessible. And same goes for the your question around, you know, the number of fixed penalty notices and court action as well. In relation to the just if I may, just in relation to the public space protection order, just to kind of give some reassurance. The majority of actions that we take around the public space protection order are instructions, or what you may call a warning, because actually the public space protection order is about changing behaviour as opposed to kind of generating an income. So it's not about the number of fines that are issued, it's more around that change of behaviour really. So certainly in relation to the public space protection order, which is in the TS1 area at the moment, there's by far more instructions issued, an instruction to change your behaviour, an instruction to pick up some litter, or sometimes it's called a warning. But I can absolutely get you a breakdown of all of those, and that can also include the environmental enforcement team as well. I can get that for you.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Councillor Cook, did you want to come in?
Yeah, so it's one comment and then one question. So the comment is relating to locality. I think you've actually undersold it, if I'm honest. So I've been quite heavily, because I'm a pain, I'll be honest. I've been heavily sort of monitoring locality in Newport, and it's absolutely amazing to know that if a child is in care, that isn't just that department dealing with it. There's a whole wraparound service that are all looking at that situation, making sure that that family's got all the support that they need, and all those departments being able to talk to each other like they do now is absolutely amazing. So knowing that, like, if the area care staff spot something on the street that they think is of a particular concern to neighbourhood safety, that then goes in and it completes that picture, and we get that sort of better ward reporting. And it's absolutely amazing, and I can't speak highly enough of it, or my locality manager, Adam Parkinson, who does an excellent job. So I'll just get that in there quickly. And my other sort of question is around AIM, and my big concern with AIM is that it's a case of who shouts loudest. Now, I can guarantee there'll be alleys in my ward where if a fridge gets fly tipped, I will get 8 reports for it. There'll be others where no one will care if 18 fridges and 18 mattresses get
It's about fly tipping.
It's the same with ASB though, but fly tipping is a good example. And what we have to be careful of is that we're not just directing to those that are reporting, but to where the actual issues are. Because I know that in particular streets, people are too scared to report, and I can completely get it. I've seen the repercussions of what happens when people do. So what can we do to make sure that, one, we up reporting, but when we can't get people to report, what is the alternative there to make sure that those figures don't get dropped off?
Councillor Smiles, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I will. It's great to hear that what your perceptions are of locality, Chris. That is really good to hear. It shows that it's working, and I think it's only going to go strength to strength when we can actually get people physically in a building. I think it's going to be amazing. In terms of AIM, it's a really good point actually, but obviously there's lots of people that sit around that table who are advocates for those areas. You know, we know that sometimes people don't pick up the phone, so if there's a big issue, we'd expect them to raise it then and there in the meeting.
Right, I've got Councillor Garvey next. Councillor Garvey, and then I'll bring Councillor McTighe. Councillor Garvey.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for that in-depth report, Councillor Smiles. It was brilliant. But one thing you didn't mention was the work that we're doing behind the scenes on school uniforms, the fairness and justification of items and costs. Can you elaborate on where we are with that at the minute?
Councillor Smiles.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Lee. It's something that we're all really wanting to help with and issue some guidance really to schools, because we don't want parents struggling to pay to get the children to school in a uniform. It's ridiculous. Even though I'm a great believer in school uniform, actually, I don't think it needs to be priced extortionately. So obviously we've all met, we've agreed that there was going to be some research done on the schools and some discussions had with the schools. And I believe, well, I hope that we'll be getting an update soon from the officer that's been doing that work, but I'll keep pushing it, Lee, I promise.
Right.
Thank you.
I bring in Councillor McTighe. Councillor McTighe, you have a question?
Yes, sorry, Chair. It's just a bit of a clarification on AIM. When it was operating under Ray Mallon, it wasn't. It did not include it did not include fly tipping. Although fly tipping is a crime as such. It was merely police matters, including antisocial behaviour. How does that compare with how you're going to operate it this time? Are we to tell people that fly tipping will be put on this map, or just actual crime involving the police?
Councillor Smiles.
Yes, it's all information like that. We've obviously got that flying squad now. It's not in my remit, but that's tackling fly tipping. But it's even, like bin fires, things as simple as that. All of that information is pulled together by our data analyst, whose specific task is to to look at all of those kind of issues.
But when residents report something, they don't have to give the name and address, do they?
No.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Councillor Rooney?
Thanks. Just taking on the aim thing. When I worked at Stockton, there was a data analyst over there, and she was really excellent, but she was under the police. And I'm just thinking, how is the information getting to the panel? Which is it coming from the wardens and the police? And will there be reports that come back out through either the community policing or through a newsletter that tells us what's been happening in our particular ward? Because it's encouraging to go back to residents and say, well, actually, yes, they have listened. This is, how it's been recorded. And we already get some data mapping, but I'm interested in how it actually comes from the AIM programme. Thanks.
Councillor Smiles, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I can do. I know that the police actually, is part of their push for community, stronger community policing, they're doing ward by ward newsletters. But it's a really good idea. Yeah, possibly something we could look at, Marion.
Has anyone else got any questions? Councillor Higgins? Councillor Halawi, I can't see you, so you're going to have to just open your mic if you want to ask a question. I'll bring Councillor Higgins in.
Thanks, Chair. I was just wondering about the flying squad. I know you said it wasn't in your remit, but could you tell me how many people are in that? Because I think there's about 3, isn't there? And do your is the wardens are under you, aren't they? Yeah.
Yes.
So do they use your wardens as well?
Councillor Smiles?
Teresa, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not sure on the numbers in terms of the squad, and Jeff's not here at the moment, but I can certainly get a breakdown for you to answer that.
I was a bit concerned about, people have said that the wardens get pulled off places to help the flying squad because there's so few of them. And we need to be protecting the staff to make sure that what they're employed to do, they do. And if the flying squad is not fully staffed, we need to get more because it's a good.
Can you ensure that Councillor Higgins gets that reply, Councillor Smiles?
I can, Councillor Thompson. I think Marion wanted to come in there, if that's okay, to add something.
Bring Marion in. Marion, did you want to come in?
Thank you. Yes, so the environmental team sits under my area. So there's 4 teams, and each team we've got 2 people. So what we've got is we've got somebody from the environment team who's kind of come across into my service area. So you've got 4 vehicles with 2 people working in each of those 4 teams. So there's 8 people in total. 4 of them from what was an environment services team, and then the other are 4 of my environmental enforcement wardens. So those are the environmental enforcement wardens who've been dealing with fly tip and enforcement already. So they're now able to go along, inspect the fly tip for any evidence that's there, capture it straight away, and then clear it in one pass. So that's who's made up of those teams at the moment. But the rest of the neighbourhood safety wardens have always been able to report in any fly tipping, but they don't take it away or do the same work that the environmental wardens do.
Thank you for that. I'll bring Councillor Adin in. Councillor Adin, did you have something?
Yes, Chair. Thank you. Thanks very much. Councillor Smiles, you mentioned about these organisations and the outdoor gathering and so on. In terms of this outdoor gathering, do you think, obviously I know not at this point, say probably July, August time, do you think we might be able to get back to our, like not big, massive one, it's a reasonable gathering out there in the centre square or in the Albert Park, do you think?
Councillor Smart, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, I can. So we're very cautiously looking at an orange pip in August. Is that right, Charlotte? I think it's August. But Yes.
Yeah, it's just at the end of July is the first one. So absolutely, we're cautiously looking at those events and the numbers around that. But we're planning for that first event for it to be either on Centre Square if we're still required to social distance, or on Baker Bedford Street if we're not. So we're planning multiple scenarios for our own events, and we're working with the central government DCMS advice in terms of the large scale event, testing that in May. So we'll be responding to that advice that we get. Thank you.
Brilliant. Can I also check? I mean, I was talking about, thinking about this Middlesbrough Mela and that. Obviously, that was the fantastic event, as you know, where it brings everybody together, and it is beneficial for the whole community, you know. So I wondered, so will you be able to do it at some point, the outside one?
Yeah.
Sorry,
In terms of the Mela, actually won Best Digital Mela this year, which is just fantastic. But yes, the sooner that we can do them safely, the better.
Right, I bring Councillor McTighe. Councillor McTighe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Going back to Wardens, Mika, and sorry, not Wardens, fly tipping. In the past, we've never had any comeback with regard to where it's gone, whether it's gone to court or whatever, unless we happen to bad gazette and see something in there. For the first time ever recently, I had a reply back saying found something and it was being investigated. So I asked if I could be kept in the loop. Could that be something that you could start off now, please, if we do find anything and you're going to take it forward? Obviously, some of it will be confidential, but if you could just let us know that something is being taken forward, that we can go to residents and say, don't say nothing's being done, because when such and such thing was reported, evidence was found and it's going forward. That's all we need to give them, and it will satisfy them. Because all too often we get nothing's been done, nothing's been done. In the Black Path, I don't know if you won't know where it is, but it leads from Beechwood through to Salter Scale. It's a long footpath. And in the last 12 months, I've had to report, just me alone, apart from other councillors and residents, 36 fly tipping. If I don't go there every other day, it will be left because a lot of residents, like I've said, say, what's the point? Nothing can be done. And
can we stick to questions? Can we stick to questions for Councillor Smiles rather than ward issues?
Can you help me with it? Thank you.
Councillor Smiles, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I can. I don't want to step on Dennis's toes because he's obviously the person that looks after fly tipping. But I agree with you. I think we absolutely need to up prosecutions, and that's the whole point of this flying squad. But also something else you touched on there, it's the publicity. We need to make sure that people are absolutely aware that people are getting fined for this. And it's, I think that'll go a long way to helping prevent further incidences of it.
I'll bring in Councillor Coop. Councillor Coop, do you want to ask a question or comment?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's just when we had the opening for the town hall, when it was all refurbished a few years ago, we had a lovely, fantastic event. Have you thought about having another one when it's going to be reopened? I know we can't decide yet because of COVID, but somewhere in the future, perhaps another relaunch event, because that was superb and it really did launch the town hall. Invite some people along, invite people from all over the town, maybe have 2 events and things, and relaunch it to show people how good it really is. Thank you.
Councillor Smiles.
Definitely. But as soon as we can celebrate, David, we will be, I promise, and I'll be there.
Excellent, thank you.
Has anyone got any more questions? Councillor Halawi, I can't see you, so I don't know whether you've got any questions.
Yes, Chair, I just have one question, and it's just when I look, Councillor Smiles, at your huge portfolios, I think I counted 112 aspects across education and culture and communities. In all humility, I just wonder how you manage to keep abreast of all those different 112 aspects of the work. I mean, do you have them come on board on and off? Do you sometimes have a glut of work in any particular area? How does that work for you on a day-to-day management of all that responsibility?
Councillor Smiles.
That's a really good question. I would say that it's down to the amazing staff that we've got that really keep me abreast of the situation. You know, I've got weekly meetings with different directors. I've got a really good relationship with operational leads like Charlotte and Marion, who text me when they need to keep me updated on things. But yeah, I'm not going to lie, it takes up 90% of my time. But I do enjoy it, and I hope I'm doing a good job.
Anyone
Thank you,
else
Chair.
got any more questions? Councillor
think that-
Howie?
Could I just say thank you for that? I'm reassured to know that, you know, it's close working with some excellent staff that we have. I agree. And I also agree that there's some excellent initiatives which are on board at the moment. For example, Locality Working that Chris mentioned. So I think we have some good initiatives working, and I hope they continue to do so and expand. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Has anyone else got any more questions? No? Well, I'd like to thank Councillor Maker Smiles for that presentation and coming along to scrutiny and answering questions, and thanks to our supporting officers who come along too. You're all welcome to stay, but if you want to go, please feel free. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to the agenda. Next agenda item, which is the Middlesbrough Council's response to the COVID-19, and we've got the Chief Executive, Tony Parkinson, and Director of Public Health, Mark Adams, who's going to give us an update on the COVID situation. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not sure you have got Mark, actually. I think you've just got me. Gemma, are you sharing the presentation, or do you want me to?
That's all right. I'm pulling it for you now.
Okay, great. So I've got a brief presentation, and I'll just cover some of the key stats we've got at the moment, and some of the questions that were left hanging at the end of the last meeting. So some of the issues raised at the last meeting with a response there. So if we go to the first slide. So a previous query from OSB, you wanted a revision of the an update on the revisions made to the outbreak control plan. As you know, we've had to refresh those and seek further government assurance on those. In terms of the additions, around care homes, we've got enhanced support in that we've extended it into other care settings such as supported housing, extra care housing, children and children's homes. So that regime that we had in care homes is now across all of those care settings. We provided enhanced to schools now within the plan, particularly around testing in schools and home testing for pupils, who, as you know, are now testing twice a week. We've done some work to update high-risk settings based on where we've had outbreaks and the support there. That's particularly around workplaces. And we've updated the whole of the testing section so that it reflects the testing that's now available to all people as of tomorrow, rather than just having the symptomatic sites. We're one of 7 councils who are nationally who are taking on responsibility for local contact tracing. So we're getting information from the national system within 6 hours of an individual of a positive result, and we're now contacting those people rather than the national number. And so far we've been able to demonstrate that we contact more people that way, so we've had to include that in our plan. We've also got something around surge capacity in there as well. So if we need to undertake some surge testing, as we did at the Parkway Centre, how do we go about that as variants spring up? We've also added a section on community insights and tackling enduring transmission and building COVID-safe communities. This will particularly be around our network of COVID champions that we use in particular geographies or with particular groups of people who live in the town. And we've used that on a number of occasions to good effect so far. The plan's also been updated with a section on vaccination and something around improving uptake in all communities. And I've got the latest figures on vaccination for you later on in the presentation. And then we've put in a section on lessons learned and feedback to government, because a year in, we've obviously learned what works well and what hasn't worked so well when we've had outbreaks and such like. Another query, we were asked for an update on vaccination numbers through confirmation around age and such like. So I'm not so sure how well you can see this, I'm struggling myself, but the totals provided at the March meeting of OSB included only specific priority groups. So they excluded, for example, health and social care and care home staff and those in priority groups 5 and 6 that had already been vaccinated. So that was the reason for the discrepancies that we've got, that we had it, or the reason why we couldn't answer the questions that we had last time. Didn't really understand the figures in their entirety. They were still pretty new then. But I have got a further update on vaccinations, which I'll spend a bit more time on further on in this presentation. So we talked about community testing last time, and there was a question around the confirmation of numbers tested versus the number of positive cases. And you can see there, if we look across the testing period from the 25th of January through until the 7th of March, positivity rate was running at about 0.9%. So the vast majority of people who were testing negatively. We would expect that because of asymptomatic testing. So about 1% of all those tested were testing positive. And you can see in terms of our asymptomatic testing sites there that up until the 7th of March, Sports Village had tested almost 1,200 people with 7 positives. Newport Settlement 441 with 4 positives. North Ormsby 424 with 12 positives. And organisation testing, so testing that we've got going on in workplaces, including borough taxis and on a roll, for example, we'd had 822 tests with 3 positives. So out of the 2,883 tests that had been done on asymptomatic people, we'd identified 26 people, which gives us the rate of 0.9%. We also discussed vaccination hesitation, and a request was made for a provision of vaccination refusal rates by ethnicity. We can't get those because, I mean, please remember that we're not in control of these figures. And the figures are provided by Primary Care Network, not specifically Middlesbrough, and the two are slightly different. So the Primary Care Network covers a population of 160,000, whereas Middlesbrough has a population of, says here 149,000. I think it's 140 actually. So they're not directly comparable, but we do know that the vaccine inequalities issues that are coming out of that are around ethnicity. So there's some differences in uptake, particularly around those with African, Pakistani and Indian heritage. Deprivation, so there's a significant 20% difference between those more deprived and those more affluent areas, and gender as well. So less men seem to be prepared to be vaccinated than women. So we're working on that with the CCG and with other councils to look at a vaccine equity plan to increase uptake of the vaccines across all communities in Middlesbrough and narrow these gaps. So we're looking at home test, kind of home visits as part of this. We're also looking at pop-up testing and vaccination sites. We've had one in a mosque today, for example, where I know in the first 2 hours we had 50 people who attended. It was open to the general public, but it was we particularly used a mosque to try and get to the ethnic demographic that we wanted to. So I'm certain that over time that will increase as we start to understand the issue more. Move on again, Gemma. And then there was a request made for the standard PPE provision to care homes. So the standard list of items that are provided to care homes are face masks, gloves, aprons, visors, eye protections, gowns, both surgical and non-surgical, and hand sanitizer. So we maintain a store that any care home can access at any point in time. And I understand that government have recently issued some guidance around this that means that will be in situ until March of next year. Just move on again, Gemma. So in terms of the latest COVID position, very, very positive. We've seen the decline that I talked about at the last meeting continue. And actually, as we stand today, I think we're down to 31. Based upon yesterday's figures, then the rate was at 34. So you can see we've come down significantly. Only 4 new cases added to the system yesterday. And if we move on to the next slide, we'll see a corresponding drop in the number of people who are in hospital. So I think the number peaked at around about 280. There are currently 27 COVID patients within James Cook, no admissions in the previous 24 hours. And of those 27 who were in hospital with COVID, 6 are in critical care, 6 are ventilated, and 3 are on oxygen. So those figures are much, much lower than they've been for some considerable time. And in fact, if you look at the graph, lower than since the point at which we started to record this information in November of last year. So all really positive on the rate of COVID within the town and on the level of illness caused by that rate of positivity within the town. Not underestimating, of course, that there were 27 people who were ill in hospital. And this table here depicts the number and percentage of Middlesbrough citizens who've received dose 1 and dose 2 of a COVID vaccine. So you'll see in terms of total number of people vaccinated in the town, just over 64,000 people have been vaccinated. That's about 45.7% of our population. And about 12,500 of the population have had their second dose as well. When we look at age ranges, they're all pretty high. 50 to 54s, we've got 83.8% of that age range vaccinated. That figure's low because that age range came later than the others. Likewise with the 55 to 69s, where we're at 94.2%. And then you'll see in the over 60s, we're at over 100%. And the reason it shows us over 100% is that issue I mentioned earlier of the primary care network footprint being greater than the council footprint. The area where we've not hit 100% yet is the over 80s, where 6,000 people have been tested, which represents, we think, at 96.6%. We're looking at that, and what we'll be looking to do there is to link in with GP surgeries, get lists from their patient, get names from their patient lists, and try to make direct contact with those individuals to try and arrange vaccinations for them so that they can become protected too. Just move on again, Gemma. And then just in terms of the decisions that have been made at the Gold meeting recently, just to keep you in the picture there. So we did receive some guidance around one of the grants that we've received, the additional restrictions grant. And on the back of that guidance, there's an extra £1 million available. And any uncommitted funds from the total of the additional restrictions grant need to be allocated by the 31st of March. So we've done that. And on the back of that, we've decided to make single payments of £500 to taxi drivers. Now, we've been in negotiation around making payments to taxi drivers for some time. There's lots and lots of different ways that the councils have done that, but we've come to an arrangement whereby taxi drivers will receive £500 worth of benefit. And once further guidance is received, which we're waiting that from the government, we'll be looking at the additional options of spend against the remaining uncommitted 2.5 million. Now, I know that we're beyond the 31st of March, but the deadline has been extended in light of the fact that the government haven't provided us with the guidance. So I'm not concerned about the fact that that's not committed at the moment. We will commit that. We just need the guidance to tell us where and how it can be committed, and then we'll go back to the list of ideas that we've got and we'll commit that money on that basis. Is that any? I think that was the last slide, Gemma, wasn't it? Oh, no, it wasn't. Yes, it was. Sorry. So that's it. Let's stop to numbers low. We seem to be on top of the situation at this point in time, but happy to answer any questions about that or anything else.
Thanks for that excellent presentation, and it's very reassuring that the figures are coming down. I'll take Councillor Coop and then Councillor Cook. Councillor Coop.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, Tony. My doctors contacted me after I'd been contacted by the National Health, but I heard of other doctors' surgeries who say unless you're on email, unless you're on text or something, they don't contact them. And I had a report today from one particular councillor who said that a 92-year-old had trouble getting the second jab because the doctors won't contact them. How are you going to encourage them to actually contact some of the older people? Because not everybody has email, text or anything like that. They prefer letters. We might remember them, but that's a bit of a problem and it needs to be addressed. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Sorry, Chair.
I'm bringing Tony to respond.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks, David. I mentioned that we were going to be going through GP surgeries to get lists from their patient lists and details there. What we'll be looking to do, because the research shows that people are much more likely to respond to a telephone call than they are a text or an email, particularly as they get older. So we'll be looking at assisting the GP surgeries, perhaps by utilising our local contact tracing staff to make contact with those people who haven't responded so that they can respond.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you just clarify, Tony, that if the over 80s who can't get to a surgery to get the vaccine, would provision be made to go into the homes?
That's what we're looking at the moment, Chair. We're looking at whether or not that can be done. I'm sure it can be because obviously vaccinations take place in care homes. So yeah, I think we're talking about a couple of hundred people over 80 who would need to be vaccinated. So that's what we're trying to just logistically plan at the moment with GP surgeries.
But it wouldn't just be in a home; it would be in that some still living at home, aren't there? At that age,
in their home,
yeah.
In their own home, yeah.
Thank you for that clarification. I'll bring in Councillor Cook. Councillor Cook.
It's just a positive comment, really. I've been going for my COVID tests in the Newport hub every week because I just want to make sure I'm not spreading it to anyone, mainly. And I'm absolutely astounded every time at how professional and how well done it is in there. Having sort of worked in education and seen how we've done it, you've absolutely excelled, and all the staff should be really proud at what they've done for the communities. Just that, really.
Thanks, Councillor Cook. Firstly, thank you for being so COVID responsible that you go for a weekly test. And secondly, I think, yeah, absolutely, the staff deserve tremendous credit. We've had to staff the testing sites up with people who don't do this as their day job. Some of them are casual staff, some of the staff who do other jobs, desk jobs normally. So they've really stepped out of the comfort zone, and the staff effort, around testing, but actually since COVID began has been outstanding.
Yeah, I'd just like to second what Councillor Cook said. I've been using the Sports Village regular, and I've also been to pick up testing kits so I can do it at home myself. So I think that's an invaluable service. So well done to everyone involved. Any more questions? Councillor Dane?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Yeah, just a comment, Chair. Yeah, I think Tony was absolutely brilliant. Again, as Jeff said earlier on, did a really great job and great presentation. Last presentation in March sometime, I think, wasn't it? I was a bit concerned with a few of the things, like a few of the questions and all this, but I think they're all cleared now, and I'm really so pleased. Things are much improved and going really, really well. And I will say again, thanks and fantastic, the staff and yourself, your team, everyone. Thank you very much for the stuff. Fantastic job.
Thanks very much for that, Zafar. One of the things I should have mentioned, Chair, was you'll be aware that from tomorrow, anybody can test themselves at home twice a week. So we're currently planning for that. What we're hoping to do is that we allow people to attend one of the 4 test sites to collect their first lot of tests, and we'll help them undertake the first test so we can show them how to do it. And then after that, there's going to be a big promotion campaign aimed at getting people to regularly order those tests so that they do them themselves at home, because we'd be overrun otherwise. But the plan is that everybody will go for their first test to a testing centre. They'll be given a supply to take away, but they'll be shown how to do the test properly so that when they do it at home, it's done properly.
And how long will that be around for, Tony?
How long is a piece of string? I really don't know, Chair. I think it's going to be around for some... Sorry, my eye's just been drawn to Sylvia Reynolds' dog kissing her. It'll be around for the foreseeable future, so I wouldn't like to put a date on it, but obviously it's a national push from the government, along with vaccinations, to help kind of suppress the rates. And nationally, the R rate is running at about 0.8 at the moment. So I think it's going to be here for the foreseeable future at the very least.
And we've got enough stock to provide the testing kits for people? Yeah,
I mean, people will be able to order them off the national system. So that will be the way it's done, you know. And at the moment, for example, with school children, you know, they're getting them from schools. You will be able to go online as an individual and order sufficient kits for the people who live in your household for a certain period of time.
Right, thank you for that. Any more questions for Tony? No, thank you once again, Tony, for
You're welcome.
answering our questions. You're welcome to stay, but if you need to leave, that's fine. We'll move on
Thanks,
to the
Chair.
agenda, and it's the agenda item number 6, which is the strategic plan, progress of Q3 2020 to 2021, and I believe we've got Paul Stevens, Head of Strategy, Information and Governance, who's going to give us an update. So I'll hand over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as you said, this is the Q3 update on the previous strategic plan, which covers the period October to December 2020, and was presented to the executive on the 16th of February this year. As the board will be aware, a new strategic plan was approved by Council on the 24th of February, and we'll begin the process of monitoring that plan and presenting that in the next quarterly report. But in terms of looking at this report, the board will clearly be aware that the delivery of the strategic plan, which was developed prior to the pandemic, has been impacted by COVID-19, which has been touched on in the 2 previous reports. In Q3, we again saw additional restrictions in response to rising transmission that impacted on individuals, communities and economies across the country, including Middlesbrough. And it says in the report the board should be aware, because of that, delegated authority to pause recovery activity was used during the quarter in order to divert resources to emergency response again. And in due course, the executive will receive a separate report seeking approval of revised recovery arrangements. However, despite that, the report does outline a number of achievements during the quarter in pursuit of the council's strategic aims in the longer term. And a lot of those have been covered already in the 2 previous presentations, but they include continued good progress on crime and antisocial behaviour interventions. That was covered by Councillor Smiles. Action to support remote learning for children. Again, that was mentioned earlier. Strong progress on the Children's Services Improvement Journey. There's quite a detailed section of the report on that. Good news on the Future High Streets Fund. The completion of the first phase of the town pothole purge. And the submission of new plans for the Boho X development. In terms of strategic risks, the key thing to note is the risk in relation to business continuity from the UK's exit from the EU at the end of the transition period in December, and that's been stood down in this report due to the approval of the trade and security agreement with the EU at the end of December 2020. Risks to the council's operations from the new arrangements with the EU and the longer term impacts, including opportunities from exiting the EU, such as the free port, and will be assessed over the next 6 months and beyond and reported in subsequent reports. That's a brief summary of what's in the report, but I'll take any questions on it, Chair.
Has anyone got any questions for Paul? Councillor Rooney?
Excuse me.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate what you're saying about the plan actually being refreshed, but I've got a couple of questions on, let me find them. Paragraph 17.
Yeah.
Talks about the new commissioning model for complex needs.
Yeah.
Has this been put into place yet? Because I haven't actually seen that has actually been launched.
I believe so, Councillor Rooney, but I'd have to go and get an update from Eric Scully and bring it back to you.
Right, because it would be helpful to have the information.
Yeah.
And my other point was paragraph 36, transforming the town centre.
Yeah.
The only figures we've got there about increased footfall or decreased footfall. What are the ways we're measuring this, and what are the future plans to transform the town centre? Thanks.
Well, again, I'm not sure whether the board's been appraised of what's in the future High Streets Fund and Towns Fund plans. But again, that would be something that Richard would have to, he's dropped off the meeting, would have to bring back to the committee in some detail. So I would advise that you request a briefing from him at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Chair.
Any more? Tony, did you want to come in, Tony?
Yeah. We do have a full list of projects that form the basis of both the future High Street and the Towns Fund and the Brownhill Land Fund as well. My understanding is that they're going to executive in May. More than happy for Richard to come with an outline of that to the next meeting, if that would be useful for the committee.
Thank you for that. Any more questions? Councillor Halawi, and then I'll take Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Chair. My concerns are around paragraph 28, where we talk about the continuing increase in rate of children subject to a CP also demonstrates realignment of thresholds, etc., etc. I'm really concerned that schools are worried about children not being reported because of lockdown, because not being able to be aware of children. 1/3 of assessments completed, it says, have domestic abuse as a factor due to a higher level of need presented. Have we got more staff available, more working hours? How are we going to deal with all this complex need and increased need potentially in so many different ways?
I think Sue's still on the call, Councillor Halawi. So, are you, Sue? Yeah.
Thank you. Happy to answer, Councillor Halawi. We have been we have been bringing in managed teams from a place called Innovate, and we've got 2 managed teams sitting at the assessment service at the front door. And they are helping us to, they've been helping us to bring down our backlog of work, particularly work coming in through the front door. They've also been extending their work into keeping work with children in need for a longer period of time. So that's the way that we've been managing. We haven't seen the enormous surge that was expected and has been seen in some authorities. So we have been, I would say, with the managed teams managing to keep the work. We have had actually a decrease in the numbers of children subject to child protection plans in very recent weeks, as indeed are numbers of children who are looked after. And some of those decreases are beginning to give us that, I think I've mentioned it before, Councillor Halawi, that wriggle room, just to be able to have lower caseloads and to improve our practice. So yeah, it is a balancing act. We've got a significant amount of work happening too in terms of what our future demand will look like. What will it look like? What will our workloads look like when we are at a steady state? Now that might be a sort of post-COVID steady state, but when we get to the sort of steady state, how many social workers will we need? What demand are we expecting? So we can match the demand with the numbers of social workers, not forgetting, of course, that we are on a 3-year improvement journey. I'm pleased to hear Paul say that we've made a lot of progress in the last year. We have, but again, Councillor Halawi and other councillors will know that it's a long haul, and we are sort of 1 and a bit years now through the sort of 3-year improvement journey. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. It does, Sue, yes, and it gives us a lot of background information to understand the complexities and the improvements. And I just think we all need to be aware of that all the time, don't we? And aware of the challenges and the improvements as we move forward in these 3 years. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Rooney, have you got a question for Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Paragraph 45 talks about the new jobs attributable to the investment prospectus, saying that we are above target. And so I've got 2 questions. What is the target and where are these jobs? Are they permanent or temporary? Thank you.
Again, we'll have to source that information and come back to you, Councillor Rooney, but we have an investment prospectus tracker which has that data in it.
Councillor Cook? Councillor Cook, did you have a question?
Yep, it's just relating to item 15. It would be quite helpful to actually see not only percentages but the number of incidents, and are those ASB incidents or ASB reportings, because they're 2 very different things. I am also quite pleased, and it almost brings a tear to my eye, that Newport isn't in the top 8, which I think is probably the first time, so I'm questioning the figures quite a bit. But for instance, is Hemlington, that 46% increase, is that relative to Hemlington or is that relative to Middlesbrough?
Paul?
It's relative to the previous quarter. But again, we'll come back on the absolute numbers because we've got a tracker for this too. But I'm quoting the percentages in the report, but I'll come back on the individual incidents, and it is reported incidents, not incidents.
Any more questions for Paul? Don't think so. Paul, thank you very much for that and taking questions. And I'll move on to the agenda item 7, which is the... Somebody's got the mic on. I can hear your background music. Can you make sure we're muted? Agenda item 7, which is the revenue and capital budget, the projected outturn position as at Q3 2021, and I think we've got Andrew Humble and Ian Wright. Andrew Humble, who is head of finance, planning and support, and Ian Wright, who is director of finance. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Hiya, Andrew here. I'll do a brief run through the report, the main paragraphs, and then we'll take any questions, myself and Ian. And if we can't answer them in detail today, we'll get back to you on them. So the first point to note is that we note that the Q3, which covered October to December, the total projected outturn at the end of the year was 2.796 million. That represented 294,000 underspend on non-COVID and a cost of COVID of nearly 3.1 million. So as we've said before, we've reported them separately to help you understand it. So paragraphs 6 to 42 show the bit on the normal non-COVID revenue, and paragraph 44 to 72 show the COVID. I won't go into great detail on them because it's all there in the thing, and if you want to ask any questions, paragraph 7 shows a table for the non-COVID elements, and there's a table at the end of paragraph 71 which shows the COVID elements, paragraph 70, sorry. So those are fairly detailed in the report, but if you've got any questions, please come back. We then, in paragraph 79 to 91, we then show the spend against the investment strategy. We had a budget for the investment strategy, a revised budget of 50.363 million, and the current latest estimated outturn is 45.195. So that's just over 5 million underspend against that revised budget. That is mainly due to delays in COVID, and those are detailed in paragraph 79 to 91. Then in paragraphs 92 to 93, it shows the borrowing, and it shows that the borrowing went down by 10.3 million in the quarter to 221.7 million. And then we've got the reserves in paragraph 94, and there's approximately projected to be 28.5 million of reserves, total reserves. That's both reserves that we can use and reserves that we've got earmarked for particular purposes. And also appendix 1, there's a few variants in there. There's not that many, which were over 150,000. And then appendix 2 shows a revised investment strategy, which will now be the one we use from now on for the investment strategy. The only other thing I'll mention is, as you're well aware in previous things, and we've touched on in previous presentations here, the main area of effect, financial effect, is in children's care, where there's just over 4 million effect on that. Now, obviously, that's an area of concern, and obviously Sue's there outlined what's happening on that, and we are seeing numbers down, and we will see some full year effects of things that we've put in place this year, next year. So really, that's all I wanted to do, because I didn't want to go into too much detail and keep you. So if you've got any questions, I'll be happy to take them, and if I can't answer them, I'll come back to you on them.
All right, I've got Councillor Coop and then Councillor Rooney, so I'll take Councillor Coop.
Thanks, Chair. You mentioned children's social care and also adult social care in there, which is
Yeah.
a huge part of our budget, obviously. How do you see the impact of COVID affecting this? Because obviously things, a lot of the care may be affected by it. People aren't getting the care in some cases that they need. And I'm not trying to put the blame on things, but I know in the health service, a friend of mine was not diagnosed early with prostate cancer, which caused him problems. So how do you see social care, adult care, children's care being affected in the years to come? Because obviously it's going to be a big part of our budget. It'll continue to be a big part of our budget. So we'll have to address that. How do you see that affecting that? Thank you.
That is a concern in the that is a concern in the first thing. Is that obviously there's a lot of unknowns at the moment around adult social care. Initially, we saw a decrease in costs because of, unfortunately, people were dying in care homes, etc. But now we will see an increase as people get increased support at home and that home support. So that needs keeping. I've got to be honest. It's early to say until we know how that does, till the effects of COVID come in that. As we've said on children's, there's been explanation that there was a danger that the numbers would increase as we came out of lockdown. That hasn't at the moment materialised, as Sue mentioned earlier. So hopefully that stays like that. But I think it's a wait and brief, and obviously there's hopefully going to be a fair funding review in this area in the near future. Now, when I say near future, I think it gets put off every year. And I think it's more likely to be another couple of years before we get that. It's probably not likely to be in 21, 22 and 22, 23. So I think that's an underlying issue, and we've just got to keep a watching brief and report back to here on the costs as they come through, really.
Right, I'll bring in Councillor Rooney and then I've got Councillor Higgins. So Councillor Rooney.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Andrew. It's on the reduction of income. Paragraphs 59 down to 63, well 62. But you've got a list of the income where we're going to lose money basically, and I know that's been kind of accounted for in the money that we've got to put in, but how much of a risk is this going forward, particularly when you put in the unachievable savings within that? And just as an aside, really, I've seen this a few times about reducing the mileage to staff. Is that something we want to be doing at this particular time, given how much the staff have given to us over the past 18 months? And I just wonder whether that is an area that could be revisited.
The reducing the mileage rate was in the budget report that when it was stated it would be revisited. I think it's going to be revisited mid-year, September by executive. And that is something that at the moment we've literally just parked. At the moment with COVID, we are seeing reduced mileage and that can cover part of that saving. So that will come back to exec and reconsidered by that. That was at the wishes of exec as part of the budget process. And yes, there is a need to keep an eye on the income longer term, which is ultimately why the need to build up as many reserves as we can to cover that because that is something that will happen. We're not going to get for necessarily all the income we had pre-COVID back again. And that is why we've built in the budget some COVID contingencies in the future years, in this year. And those are in the budget report in February. So that is really the logic behind a lot of them, that there will be continuing effects of COVID post what the government classes the end of lockdown in June. So I hope that answers it enough.
Thanks, Andrew.
I'll bring in Councillor Higgins. Do you have a question?
Yes, please. Thanks, Chair. Can I just say to Ian and I forgot your name already. Andrew. Sorry, sorry, Andrew. Yeah, I think we should be pushing for fair funding for the children's looked after children, because the staff there can't do any more. They are working their fingers to the bone, And I think as a committee and as a council, we have to remember that the funding for children and elderly are just two of the main service areas that we have to make sure that we fund properly. And I don't want to be scrimping and scraping for the children in this town. There's plenty of money there for other things. Make sure we put more than enough in for the children and the elderly, please. And I know you and Andrew and Ian, you always do a fabulous job. And you make sure that you take care of the money for the people of Middlesbrough. But please keep an eye on the children's services, because they can't do any more than they're doing. Don't let them go without. Thank you.
Thanks, point noted.
Councillor Halawi.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew, could I just ask you to maybe rehearse reminders about the balance of reserves and reassure us that things are in hand, that they're a safe balance, that there haven't been significant changes recently, and some sort of qualitative statement about how you feel where we are with them at the moment? Thank you.
Yeah, in the budget report, I don't know whether you can recall, but in the budget report we increased the general fund reserve from a level of 9.4 upwards to just over 11.5, I think it was. And that was in anticipation, and there was a working behind that, and that was in anticipation of that. There is obviously a level to try and get as much of the reserves up, and this is, as we've just mentioned, to cope with potential pressures ongoing of COVID and provide a safe and secure. So yes, definitely there is a need to go up, and definitely we are looking at how we can maximise reserves all the time, but without affecting service provision, obviously. So.
We got any more questions for Andrew?
Thank you, Andrew.
Councillor Rooney.
Thanks, Chair. It's going back to the proposed revised investment strategy on Appendix 2 and Boho X. Now, we are going to be channeling over 26 million into that particular development. Do we know what the anticipated return on this will be and over what time scale? Because I'm assuming there will be a return on it.
I will get back to you. I can't answer that, obviously. I don't honestly know the answer to that, so I'll get you back on the answer on that, and I'll get a detailed answer on that.
Okay, thanks, Andrew.
Thanks very much.
Any more questions? Can I just say thank you to Andrew and Ian for your attendance and taking questions. You're welcome to stay, but if you want to leave, that's fine. So thank you once again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right, move on back onto the agenda, which we're up to agenda item 8, which is the Scrutiny Chair's update. The ad hoc hasn't met since the last OSB, so there's no report on that. I'll hand over to Councillor Platt, Chair of Adult Social Care and Services Scrutiny Panel, to give his update. Councillor Platt.
Yes, thank you, Chair. At the meeting of the 10th of February and the 10th of March, the panel heard from officers in relation to support for carers, which the panel had planned to review. However, following agenda distribution for the March meeting, the panel learned from officers that there was to be a large-scale South Tees carers procurement process, which would be completed in October 2021. The panel therefore agreed to relook at this issue after the procurement process was completed. This will allow us to fully look at the issues and ensure we speak to all relevant parties. Our next meeting will take place next week on the 14th of April, when Eric Scully will be in attendance and he will review our difficult year for the adult social care. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Platt. Has anyone got any questions for Councillor Platt? No? Right, the next one is...
Chair.
Sorry, I didn't see you there.
It's all
Councillor
right.
Higgins.
Councillor Platt, when you said that there's going to be a review in the service, have you any idea what kind of review? Is it going to be a reduction in staff? Is it going to be a reduction in money, a reduction in how many people they have to see? I think we need to be knowing that before the review is finished, so we can put our 2 pennyworth in.
Councillor Platt.
Yes, no, we have finished our everything for this year, but we just invited Eric Scully to, because we had 3 months, and we were asking him what it was like during this COVID year, which has been a very difficult year for adult social care, and that's all it's about, Councillor.
Right, move on to Councillor Rowley.
Yeah, just to add to that, I'm on that panel as well, and maybe just to reassure you, Councillor Higgins. What we were going to do was look at an area of work which was about to go into a new procurement exercise. It's about the ending of a set of contracts and the beginning of a new set, and it's a normal process. And we felt that if we looked at it in any great depth, it might I'm trying to think of the right word, just not hinder, but certainly come into conflict with what the work was doing. So we've delayed it. We've not said we're not going to do it. We've delayed it until the new programme, but that'll obviously depend on who the new chairs are as well. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank
Chair.
you. Bye.
Any more before I moved on? No? Right, I'll take the Children and Young People's Learning Scrutiny panel, and that's Councillor Stephen Hill. So I'll hand over to you, Councillor Hill.
Thanks, Chair. The Children and Young People's Learning Scrutiny panel last met on Monday the 22nd of March when we received written evidence in schools in regards to our current topic of behaviour, discipline and bullying in school. The panel also received an update from the Director of Children's Services related to education and COVID-19 recovery. The next scheduled meeting of the panel is on Monday the 19th of April, where we'll continue to gather evidence relating to the aforementioned topic. In attendance will be Craig Nicholson, the head of Northampton Primary Academy, who will be providing information on the successful and proactive strategies and solutions used to prevent and tackle bullying in schools. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hill. Has anyone got any questions for Councillor Hill? No? Right, I'll move on. The next one is Children and Young People Social Care and Services Scrutiny Panel, and that's Councillor Lee Garvey. So I'll hand over to you, Councillor Garvey.
Thanks, Chair. The Children and Young People's Social Care Services Scrutiny Panel last met on the 22nd of March 2021. The panel was attended by the Policy and Petition Participation Manager from CUM Charity, the National Charity for Children in Care and Care Leavers in England. The panel heard about the work undertaken by BECOME, particularly in relation to tackling the stigma and negative perceptions faced by care experienced children and young people and care leavers. The panel also heard from the service manager from Adoption Tees Valley in relation to the adoption process and how Adoption Tees Valley worked with the 5 local authority partners, particularly Middlesbrough, obviously. The key pressures and the challenges for the service, and also the positive work that is taking place. The panel also was provided with a verbal update on COVID recovery and children's services, and our next meeting is scheduled for the 19th of April. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Garvey. Has anyone got any questions for Councillor Garvey? No? Right, we'll move on to the next one, which is Culture and Community Scrutiny Panel. Unfortunately, as people know, that the chair is not available due to ill health, and the vice chair is unable to attend. So Scott has kindly offered to step in, as he is the supporting officer for Culture and Communities. So I'll hand over to Scott.
Thanks, Chair. It's a very brief update from the Culture and Community Scrutiny Panel this time round. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, the March meeting of the panel had to be cancelled. However, the next meeting is scheduled for next week, the 15th of April. At that particular meeting, we're going to be receiving representations from Cleveland Police on an update and the impact of Operation Phoenix. So that should prove to be extremely useful about the impact that Operation had on domestic violence cases. We're also going to be receiving an update on the implementation of the RIP policy the council has by representatives from Information Strategy and Governance. We're hoping as well that the panel will consider some terms of reference for its forthcoming review into the Neighbourhood Warden Service. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that update, Scott, and thank you kindly for stepping in. Any questions for Scott? No? Right, we'll move on to the next one, which is the Economic Development, Environment and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel. And we've got Councillor Mick Saunders here, who's going to give us an update. So I'll hand over to you, Councillor Saunders.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, the panel last met on 24th of March, and we can continue with its Middlesbrough Regeneration post-COVID scrutiny review. There was two presentations. Firstly, the Transport Infrastructure Manager and the Infrastructure Programme Manager provided an overview of the Middlesbrough Local Implementation Plan and the plans for a public consultation. Also, Head of Economic Growth and Infrastructure provided an update on Middlesbrough Council's successful bid for High Street Fund and Town Fund, which Councillor Smiles alluded to earlier on, totaled £36 million. At the next meeting, which will be on the 21st of April, the panel will be receiving presentations on the Middlehaven Master Plan and livable neighbourhoods as part of its current review. Take any questions, Chair?
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Has anyone got any questions for Councillor Saunders? No? Right, I'll take the Health Scrutiny Panel, and we've got Councillor Joan McTighe. So I'll hand over to you, Councillor McTighe.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, please. The Scrutiny Panel is currently investigating the topic of health for wealth, examining how well local economic plans, policies and design-making processes support inclusive growth and population health improvement. The panel met on the 23rd of March last to agree its terms of reference for the review, including the witnesses it wishes to invite to present evidence on the topic. The Director of Public Health in South Tees also attended, providing an update in respect of COVID-19 and the local public health and NHS response to that. Excuse me. The panel also considered a report from the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny with regard to the government's health and care white paper, and in particular issues relating to the health scrutiny function. Most notable was a proposal to remove health scrutiny's power of referral to the Secretary of State. The panel's next meeting is scheduled for April the 20th next, and the Chief Executive of Tees, Esk and Weir Valley NHS Foundation Trust will attend to discuss its CQC report, excuse me, which was published recently as a result of an unannounced visit in January, which was well publicised in the local press. It is also hoped that the Chief Executive of Cumbria, Northumberland and Tyne and Wear NHS Foundation Trust will attend to discuss the provision of inpatient children's mental health services from the 1st of April 2021 at the former West Lane Hospital, now renamed Acklam Road Hospital. And can I just add from myself and hopefully from the rest of the panel that I personally would welcome more of these unannounced inspections into any establishment that looks after children and vulnerable people, because clearly what we see on the outside isn't what we see on the inside. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor McTighe. Has anyone got any questions for Councillor McTighe? Can I thank all the chairs for their update? We go on to any other urgent items. I'd just like to say that I attended the North East Members Scrutiny Network on the 26th of March. This covers the North East region, and the aim of the group is about sharing information, experience and knowledge. It's not a decision-making body. The meetings are quarterly, and after some discussion, it was agreed to invite 6 people from each authority to attend. This would be a useful forum for chairs of scrutiny. We had a presentation from the Centre of Governance on Health, which part of it Councillor McTighe has covered. and one from the Housing Solutions, which covered poverty, homelessness, the impact of COVID, the response to COVID and domestic abuse. I found this network very useful and I would encourage people to attend if you get the opportunity. So I don't have any other urgent items. Councillor Hubbard?
Yes, I'd like to echo what you said about that meeting that we went to across the northeast. I found it extremely useful. It was great networking, and I think together across the region, when we want to make decisions about serious issues such as the white paper on health, I think we've got more clout to be a united front from right across the whole area rather than our smaller regional zones. So yeah, it was really a good meeting, that Chair. I agree totally. It'd be really good to attend more and that other people should attend. It was really informative and helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hubbard. As this is our last meeting before the AGM and possibly our last virtual one, I would like to thank board members for their contribution. I would particularly like to thank officers for their attendance. And lastly, but not least, the Democratic Services for enabling these meetings to take place. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.
Bye. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Bye.